Hi there. Thanks again for joining us here for another edition of The Other Tom Green Show. And today, among other things, we're going to talk a lot about versatility. And to do that, we turn the page back to 1960s television.
The Rifleman. Starring Chuck Connors.
Yeah, Chuck Connors. He was also over television and films back in the 60s, but you may not know that the actor Chuck Connors also played for the Brooklyn Dodgers and for the Boston Celtics. He truly was a guy who could do it all. Speaking of a guy who could do it all, today's guest is Dave Logan. Hey, I want to remind you about our sponsor, Golf Den. It's a great opportunity if you find yourself out at the airport to not just waste your time staring at your phone, but maybe get some swings in. Golf simulators. Yep, they've got them there. You can stop and have a drink, take a few swings, enjoy your time while you wait for your flight to get ready to go. It's right there on the mezzanine level of Concourse A. Check it out. It's Golf Den. Get a chance to play, courses from around the country or just hit some balls. There you see it. It's a great place. Check it out. You can also give the gift of Golf Den. They have gift certificates. All you have to do is go to their website to book a time or to buy some gift certificates to give to someone else. It's golf-den.com.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Mile High Stadium on a beautiful Sunday afternoon.
Will Newton face some pressure here? About four-man rush. Newton in the pocket. He's hit and sacked inside the 5. The ball is free. Denver's got it. Touchdown, Denver. Pressure on Love. Love throws the ball middle of the field. The ball behind the defender. Intercepted. Intercepted by Riley Moss. They look to him. Throw the fade. Sutton is there. Sutton makes the catch. Touchdown, Denver.
A lot of people enjoyed Sunday. They got to watch the Broncos beat the Packers. Some of us were working, though, like Dave Logan. Dave was there, the man on the mic, as always, for now more than 600 Bronco games. Susie Wargin, your team made a big deal out of that. It's a jarring number. Was it surprising to you, 600?
Yeah. I honestly, Tom, I didn't until it was brought to my attention.
Yeah.
I really didn't know because you've done this for a long time. You don't really stop and count individual games, but it was a cool reminder.
Well, football games are harder to amass. 600 football games requires the neighborhood of 40 seasons.
Yeah, so this is year 36 for me, and I have been very blessed. I have not missed a single Broncos game, and I haven't missed a high school football game. There have been some close calls, but I think you and I have talked about this before in terms of sort of how you were raised, and I was raised in a blue collar family, and you know what? You had a job to do. You got up and you went to work, and you found a way, whether you didn't feel good or something was bothering you found a way to go to work and deal with the other stuff at another time.
So when you started, you were working as the color analyst on the games, working with Bob Martin a bit, and then Larry Zimmer? Or?
No, I never worked with Bob.
Right.
Bob passed in the spring of 1990, and in fact, that's why the job opened.
Larry moved over.
When KOA called, yes.
And analyzing the games, I think people knew you and knew you'd be great at analyzing the games, doing the color. Play-by-play, a different challenge for former players because there's a lot of technical aspects to running the show.
Yeah.
Were you at all intimidated? I mean, you'd seen Larry do it. You'd worked with Zappolo and others on CU broadcasts and the like. You'd seen it done. You have confidence, but did you say this might be a little more than I want to bite off right now?
I didn't say it would be more than I wanted to bite off, but it was there was an intimidating sort of sequence of events when they came to me and said, "Hey, listen, we're thinking about moving you over to play-by-play." I initially thought they were kidding, so I kind of chuckled, and then I realized that I was the only one chuckling in the room. And no, so I took great pride in it because ex-players, guys that played in the NFL, that's not really their path. You just don't hear many ex-players that are doing play-by-play of their respective teams on radio.
Yeah.
And so I took it as a challenge, and I went back and listened to a number of play-by-play guys. I listened to Bob Martin. Bob was he was so good, and he was succinct. And
an old school, methodical,
yes,
always knew the down and distance.
Yes,
and,
for sure.
Yeah, well, there were more people at the time would use the radio to follow the Broncos.
Right.
I mean, it was a very popular way for people, even with the television, because everything was over the air at the time. So the TV and radio were usually sync. Now, who knows where you are in delays and laybacks.
No, that's right. And I think my idea going into that, and I think it's probably sort of morphed over a long period of time, was to try to be able to create for somebody that would be working in their garage that could not see the game, to, when the Broncos break the huddle, to identify where people are, what the set is. Of course, the down and distance and the time, you can never give that too much if you're doing radio. But just try to paint the picture for people, and then to be accurate with my descriptions.
And excited. I mean, you see it in some of those calls. You do know you're talking to fans. They want to hear you be a Bronco. Right. You're telling our side of the story.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to predominantly Broncos fans.
Yeah,
it's different than doing a network TV broadcast where you're, ostensibly you have equal number of fans from both teams, and you're going to piss off probably both sets of fans.
Yeah.
And that's when you've probably done a good job. But that's not the case for a hometown radio play-by-play guy. And I figured that out early in the start.
When I listen to you, I also hear your coach's voice. I do hear you. You're seeing tactics. You are seeing, like you talk about, formations and what defenses are presenting and things like that. That's very natural for you, of course.
Yeah, I think so. I think, for a long time as a player, I made my living looking at defenses and trying to understand what offenses don't like. Mm-hmm. And so I have sort of this built-in thing in my head. When an offense comes to the line of scrimmage, I'm immediately, even as a play-by-play guy, I would certainly do it as a color analyst. But even now, I will check and see where are those safeties. Because safeties, corners will lie to you all the time. Safeties, right before the snap and certainly after the ball is snapped, they have to get to where they're going. And they might not tell you what coverage they're in, but they certainly will tell you what coverages they cannot be in. And that's very helpful.
That's one of your keys when you're watching. You watch safeties, motion formation, where they are.
Yep.
This year's team has got some of that magic that teams get. It doesn't. Not everything is just because you're better, or you have better players. Sometimes it's just your year, and the Broncos have that little magic going right now that's pretty unique. And you see it a lot of times. The team's really good, and they end up, and all of a sudden, there they are at 9-8. Nothing happened. This year, everything's happening.
Yeah, I remember saying, and I believe it was the Giants game, where I said, this just might be one of those years. And that was before the comeback had been completed, but they were starting to come back. And I think what I would say is, we've expected the Broncos defense to be good, to really good, to great, and I think they have lived up to their billing. I think the offense has really sort of come into their own the last maybe 4 games, right? And I've said that I believe there's a backyard element to Bo's game that is somewhat unique and much more positive than negative. And so I think the challenge maybe for Sean and his staff, and I think they've done a good job of this, is how do we embrace that backyard element and still feel like, because I think Sean is, he's an excellent schemer. He's a guy that's been a really successful offensive coach. I mean, everything is detailed. So how, if you've got a guy that at times really can operate off script, how do you embrace it and encourage it to a point, but still manage it, which is not a good word, but still sort of wrap your head around it and get him, because Bo can operate from the pocket.
But you don't want to see him running around like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. He's got some of that in him, but you'd like for him to stay closer to the script. I'm thinking Sean might.
Yeah, maybe Sean might.
Yeah.
I think, again, I think the magic of Bo is allowing him to be him and encouraging him to a point of, I mean, he made some plays against the Packers where, that's not on script. I mean, that's just a guy that is a natural athlete, seeing something, buying some time, throwing back across his body. And I think the challenge for the coaching staff is you want to embrace it because that's who he is and he makes a ton of plays. You also know that there will be a couple of times in a game where he's going to throw the ball, and as soon as that ball comes out of his hands, you're going to grab your head and say, no. But that's, I think he's got that. Not every quarterback has that. Again, I've called it the backyard element, and I think Bo has it and is as good as some of these other 2 or 3 guys that we just talked about.
So coaching, you talked a lot about it there, and you've been doing it now for a long time. When you were first approached, or when you first approached A West, was where you started, right? Arvada West. How did that feel? Because you were a full-time broadcaster at the time. You had plenty to do, but you must have had a passion for it and a way to figure out how to make it all fit.
Yeah, I had actually applied for the Golden job the year before and gotten the job. And I was hiring assistant coaches for the first 3 or 4 days of my tenure at Golden, and then the athletic director called back and said, "Hey, we're gonna bring on a veteran coach." So I said, "Great. I mean, what? Absolutely, because I know what I don't know. So what do you want him to do?" And he said, "Well, we want him to be the head coach
Instead of you."
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. So not a lot of people know that.
No, I'd never heard that.
Yeah. I was going to coach.
So
I was going to be the head coach at Golden. So so the next year, I always had it. I always had it in the back of my mind because my dad was my youth coach in basketball and football, and both of them, but in particular my dad, talked about, hey, if you get a chance to work with young people in some capacity, you've got to take advantage of that. You have to do it. Take that opportunity. And so I'd gone out. My middle school football coach, who aside from my dad was probably one of my biggest male mentors, taught at Pomona for a long time. He was a football coach there. He asked me to, as soon as I retired from the NFL, he asked me to come out and help coordinate their offense. They were predominantly a run offense. So I did, but I couldn't. I was doing the afternoon show with Urban Joe. So I had to take vacation days, a couple days a week, and I couldn't go out there all the time. So I got the bug really back in 1980. That would have been 85 or 86. So then you fast forward 92, apply for the job at Golden, get it, then don't get it. And then he called again and said, hey, the A West job just opened. But Coach McGregor, who had been at A West for 27 years.
Brian McGregor,
yeah. He didn't announce he was leaving until June. So I think he wanted one of his 2 coordinators to get the job, and I completely get that. And so all the other coaches, guys that would have been, great head coaches, they already had jobs. In June, you're already getting ready to start the summer workout stuff. So there were 3 of us that applied, and somehow, some way, I wound up getting the job.
Did it fit you immediately? Because, we're going to talk about your success is unparalleled at the high school level as far as a head coach. But did you immediately know you were home, that you were good at it, that you loved it, that it loved you?
I've always loved football. I think football is the greatest team sport in the world. I love kids. I think I think we too often do not take opportunities to impact young people in a positive way. We just assume that they're going to grow up, and we assume that they have great mentorship or leadership at home and a great support staff, and that's not always the case.
Right.
So I knew that I loved it. I mean, I was overwhelmed. You know, I got the job in the middle of June, and trying to put together a staff, and so I took most of the offense that I remembered from the Browns and tried to implement that. And you know, I think about it. That first year's group, that first year kids, will always be really special to me, because they had a young head coach that was learning on the job and really didn't have much of a clue, you know, in terms of what we would do. I remember I had the kids write down, hey, listen, if you could beat one team, which team would it be? And it was Pomona. Pomona had beaten Arvada West.
You'd probably written down
10 years.
Golden.
Yeah. Well, when I was in Wheat Ridge, we played Golden all the time.
Yeah,
but,
when you were a player.
Golden was a 4A. Golden was a class below that.
Right.
So A
Smaller.
West was, yeah. So they all said Pomona. And we wound up playing Pomona that year. We were ahead late in the third quarter. You could just feel the momentum, and I could feel the lack of confidence from our team. They beat us, but they never beat us again. After that, we found ways to beat them. So there was just a lot to it, and I think, you know, Jim Temple was so great in sort of helping me migrate through that first part of the career.
You won the first state title there in '97, and you'd go on to win a dozen more at 3 different schools. You know, Larry Brown hopped around a little bit as a head coach.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
How did moving come about? Because I tend to think of you talk about the kids and the kids being the magnetic draw to you.
Yeah.
The parents and school administration and CHASA in some ways, all these other things can be at times the negative things, the things you have to manage and deal with, put up with, things like that. Were those roadblocks for you, or obstacles that you found tricky to manage?
Well, I think it's no. I think I've probably learned how to manage them through the years. So I just finished 33 years as a head coach. The you know, there's really, which I would like to see changed. I mean, there's no money in high school coaching, right? I mean, my salary this year, in my 33rd year, is $5,000, and that's for the entire year. So it was never a money thing in terms of me leaving. I honestly, I would have stayed at AOS probably my entire career. If I was a single dad at the time, my daughter and I lived out about 25 miles south of Arvada West. This was before even C470 was completed,
Right.
So it was a trek to get there every day. And so she was going into 9th grade, and she was going to go to Chatfield. And so the head coach at Chatfield was a guy that I had gone to high school with. And Keith called and said, hey, I'm gonna step down. The job is going to open. He says, not a very good job. But so
Thanks for the sales job.
yeah. But you know what? You don't do it. You don't do it for money. You're not. It's not like in college where you've got a better offer and it's $400,000 more, and there's all sorts of
Decisions,
reasons
yeah.
to move. But that was a good enough reason, and that really was the only reason that I left Arvada West. Chatfield had been 10-30 the previous 4 years, so it was it was a rebuilding job there.
Do you compare all the teams you've won with? I mean, you've had some great players, of course, but
Yeah.
do you look at them and go, this team, I remember this team fondly because this was the team that we couldn't have won a state title with, and we did, or this team because we had that kid who was so unique or special or such a great locker room guy. Are they individual teams to you?
Yes, yeah, they are. I mean, you'll find some teams that, you'll get to keep. Maybe I've had teams where like 6 or 7 sophomores were starters. And if you can find a way to get through that year, you know that the next couple of years are going to be
Pretty good.
pretty good. right? I mean, we got to the Final Four my second year coaching. We got the state championship game my fourth year, lost. Lost to Cherry Creek, went back my fifth year, won. And so you learn, I mean, honestly, with me, you learn so much every single year. You learn of things, you know, that you liked what you did. You learn things that, hey, I'm going to do this differently. The faces change, you know, in high school football. You're going to have a whole bunch of new faces almost every single year, whether it's freshmen that you haven't really coached per se every day, and now they're sophomores. And so it's hard to compare teams.
You have guys you coach now, though, who are 45, almost 50 years old.
Yeah.
That's got to be kind of...
I ran into my first quarterback, Zach Kiter, when we were down at, before this season started, we went to Empower Field at Mile High and had media day.
Right.
And so Zach was there, and Zach's daughter is the player of the year at Columbine in softball. And she's going to Alabama next year. And I'm thinking, man, how are you old enough to have a daughter in college? And I haven't aged like one bit. But yeah, what's really special, Tom, is you develop relationships and you develop friendships with these. I call them my kids, and now they're grown men, and now they have families, and now, I'm so proud of those relationships, because many of those have stayed intact for a long time.
Talk about the versatility of being a great broadcaster and a great head coach, but you had also been a great player. And even before then, you'd been a terrific athlete, both at Wheat Ridge and at the University of Colorado in other sports. And I just wonder about how you learned through that in high school as a farmer and as a buff to later manage time. Because it seems like the key to doing what you do now, what you've been doing for the last 30 years, is manage time as much as anything.
Yeah, I think that obviously was a challenge when I started coaching. I applied for and got the A West job. I didn't even tell KOA, which was probably retrospectively not very smart. But I was doing the 6 to 8 show, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So I was doing it by myself, and I'm thinking, well, we practice at 3:15. We're going to be done by the time I go on the air. So I got called in the office, and Lee Larson, who is still a very good friend of mine,
a giant of the business,
absolute giant, hired me at KOA and had a copy of either the News or the Post, slid it across the desk, and said, "What's this?" I said, honestly, and maybe I was just naive about it. I said, well, this is not, I'm going to do this, but he goes, why am I finding out about it now? I said, it's not going to affect anything I do at KOA. He said, everything you do affects what we, and I wasn't trying to, do anything. I just never thought, as long as I can still fulfill my broadcasting responsibilities, I thought it would not be a big deal.
Yeah. So, and it obviously has worked out, and later, I think, to the benefit of your radio employers. I think your profile.
They would take issue with that statement.
Well, of course they would.
They would take issue. I think my third year coaching, they came to me, the company said, "Hey, what do you think about working with Scott Hastings?" And I said, "Great," because I'd done 3 years of Nuggets TV with Al Albert.
Right.
Talk about great broadcasters. And so I knew Scott, got to know him a little bit. I said, "Great." They said, "So we're going to put you guys on a new station. I'll put you in the afternoons." I said, "Whatever you want me to do. Take me off the night at KOA." They said, "But we want you to stop coaching." I said, I don't want to do that.
Did you at that point felt you had the clout to win? Because now I'd say now Dave would go, "Look, I'm not doing it." They'd go, "Okay, well, whatever you want."
I wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure, but I knew that I loved working with kids and coaching, and so I don't know what would have happened had they dug in and said it's either this or you got to go, but I said I don't want to do that. So they said, okay. And so they let me continue coaching. Scott and I did the show on a smaller station. And within about 3 or 4 months, they said, we're going to move you guys to KOA in the afternoons.
Shows that good.
I said, okay, great. But you got to stop coaching. It was like the next year. I
They
said,
keep wanting to go there.
I don't want to do that. So, fortunately for me, they have allowed me to, I would say grudgingly at times, but they've allowed me to continue coaching. And now we're to the point where, they understand I'm going to miss a lot of time in the fall. And
Yeah, I filled in for you one fall when Dave Krieger was working
that's right.
with you, and I would fill in on a few days a week
That's right.
when you had to coach into the afternoon.
Yep.
You and I had a conversation before I got into sports talk radio because I was still doing TV, and the Fan was going to be born, and Bob Call said, we want you to do the afternoons on the Fan. I said,
Yep.
That's great. And so I called you, and I said, so what's it take to do sports talk radio? And the first thing you said to me emphatically was, you really got to like your partner. And I kind of laughed, and I said, I get along with everybody pretty much. And you stopped me dead in my tracks. And you said, no, you really got to like your partner. And then they gave me Doug Moe, and it was the easiest thing I'd ever done in my life. But that I talk about it. We had Kim Christensen on last week, and it's like chemistry is the magic
Everything.
that is TV or radio, and it can be 0 and it can be 100. And when it's 100, it's the easiest thing you'll ever do. And when it's 0, it's not great.
And I firmly believe that, and I don't believe that everybody who, and I think they have good intentions, but everybody who tries to put shows together completely understand that. I mean, you're spending so much time with that person, and there has to be, and I think you can develop chemistry.
Yep.
To certain levels with just about anybody, but I don't believe, like as you said, on a 0 to 10, I don't think you can get a 9 or 10 with just anybody that they put together, even if that other person is a quality broadcaster and really good at what they do.
Yeah, and it's not science or math. It's human beings. It can be anything.
You can't quantify it.
So when you came out of Wheat Ridge, you were clearly a premier athlete. Was going to Colorado the only place you wanted to go to CU, or did they augment that by saying you can play all the sports, or was that important? Was that a piece of the puzzle?
It was. I wasn't going to go anywhere that they would not allow me to play football and basketball.
Baseball was?
Baseball, I wanted to play baseball if possible. In fact, I was going to play baseball in my sophomore year, and Eddie Crowder, who had recruited me and been the head coach, got fired.
The head football coach.
And Bill Mallory came in, and I'm going to play baseball in the spring until Coach Mallory said, you're not.
And you're a sophomore.
I'm a sophomore.
Yeah, so you do what the coach says.
At that time, there was no portal, so you're sort of where you're.
Was Irv coaching?
Irv was coaching
the baseball team then.
Irv was
and
coaching.
Who was the Sox? Was the
Sox was the basketball coach. So I was playing football and basketball. Like my freshman year, the football team went to a bowl game. I didn't go to the bowl game. I went immediately to play basketball. So. Initially I was going to go to Nebraska, but the first time I was ever on a plane in my life was my senior year in high school, and I went to Lincoln and took a recruiting trip. Yeah, Coach Osborne was there, and it was a great trip, and they threw it a little bit, and so in my mind I thought, and they were the number 1 ranked team in the country.
Right.
Oklahoma was 2, CU was 3. But ultimately, I wanted to stay closer to home, so my mom and dad, family could see me play. And CU had a heck of a program, and they were going to let me. Notre Dame, Coach Parsegan came to the house, and
that's pretty cool.
That was pretty awesome. And then Digger Phelps was the basketball coach at Notre Dame. He came to the house, and ironically, Coach Phelps tried to talk me out of playing football. And I'm thinking, man,
So I didn't get to see you play in college or in high school, but I've dug into it a bit. Was football the one you were best at, or loved the most, or would you say you might have been better at basketball?
I I think I always felt like I was going to play basketball. I mean, I love football, and I loved kind of whatever I was doing.
Right.
I couldn't wait to
Put on the
get on to
shoes.
the next
Yeah.
step. But I thought that I thought that basketball would be the path that I would take. I broke my ankle at CU in a practice like 3 weeks before the NFL draft. And so I had surgery, and that did not help my draft standing. I'd been drafted by the Kings in the NBA the previous year, and what they said
Were they in Kansas City then?
they were in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Yeah. They said, hey, because I had another year of eligibility in basketball because I'd been hurt in football my junior year, missed the entire basketball season. So they said, we want you to go back to school and not have to come directly from a football season into basketball. But I thought at that point with the broken ankle, and I'm like, I think I'll just give this football thing a try. And I think the Kansas City thing was interesting because my senior year in football, we played Texas in a bowl game, and Earl Campbell, and it was cool. It was in Houston. We had the lead at halftime. They came back and they beat us, caught a touchdown pass. The next morning, I flew to Kansas City because the basketball team was playing in the Big 8 Christmas tournament.
Right.
And so Coach Walseth, and I was beat up a little bit, said, hey, listen, I'm not even sure I'm going to play you, but here's, get the uniform, play. So anyway, I'm not even sure of the circumstances, but he puts me in, and it's one of those games, Tom, I know you've had them too, where just everything you shoot goes in.
So you went right from the Bluebonnet Bowl. The next day, you're playing in the Big 8
I
tournament,
think I flew Sunday, and I think we played Monday.
and you're throwing, everything's going
I
in.
had like 24. And so, but that was in Kansas City.
Right.
And so the Kings,
See
Larry
that.
Staverman ran the Kings, and I remember approached me after the game, wanted to talk to me about like, how did this whole thing sort of transpire? But it was just, one of those games where it goes in.
In baseball, you were famously drafted in all three sports, but baseball, it was sliding off the track at this point for you. You'd played,
Yeah,
were you an outfielder, pitcher?
I was drafted as a shortstop.
Shortstop.
Yeah, by the Reds, and but I was a pitcher in high school.
Reds were pretty good back then. That was
Reds
the
were
big
the
red
big
machine. Yeah.
And I figure, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to unseat Davey Concepcion at shortstop.
He's pretty good.
He's a pretty good player. But, yeah, because I couldn't play baseball at CU, I would play in the summer. Yeah, play against the Boulder Collegians, some really good baseball talent here.
I chatted with you once about CU and Cliff Branch becoming a Hall of Fame receiver. Cliff Branch played a little bit ahead of you.
Yep.
But and I'm amazed because he goes on to become a Pro Football Hall of Famer. And you look at his numbers and your numbers and J.V. Kane and Billy Waddy and all these professional wide receivers come out of Colorado. And at Colorado, you guys never threw the ball.
No.
I mean, you'd lead the team with 22 catches.
Yeah, I think I led the team for 3 years, and I think the most passes I caught in a year was 23.
And that was 1 year under Eddie and 2 under Bill.
That's
that
right.
You played.
That's
Bill
right.
Mallory.
Yep. And I joke about it. I said, when Coach Crowder recruited me, he told me they were going to throw it 40 times a game, and that's the reason that I came to see you. And I must have misheard, and he said 40 times a year. So no, it was a run first. I mean, it was a run first sort of time in football.
Yeah.
Even in the NFL.
Sure.
Right. I mean, when I went to Cleveland, we had the first team in NFL history that had all 5 receivers in a single season had 50 or more catches. But that was at a time the two teams that threw it the most were us and the Chargers.
Yeah. Hey, I want to show a clip from Dave's days with the Cleveland Browns from 1979.
Logan's amazing one-handed grab put the Browns right back in the game. His athletic ability, which had surfaced so many times already during the '79 season, had been brilliantly showcased again. Talented enough to be drafted by pro baseball and basketball teams as well, Logan decided on football as his sport on the professional level. With 9:10 remaining in the game, there were many Clevelanders who were more pleased than ever with his choice. The score now is 44-35 Pittsburgh.
I love that clip for a variety of reasons. It's a catch I remember having seen. Everyone used to watch This Week in the NFL, and you would see these plays. But Mel Blount, you've always talked about with fear and reverence. He was a terrific cornerback, and that was on him. And you had something to say about it after you caught it.
Well, we had battled. We battled twice a year, and Mel's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, one of the great corners, one of the most imposing cornerbacks physically. When he had an interest in playing, it was going to be one of those days. But in that game, I hadn't had a ball thrown in the first half, and I was frustrated anyway. And so anytime the Steelers and the Browns got together, there was a lot of talking going on, real physical game. And on that particular play, he had my arm smartly. He had my arm pinned where I couldn't get my right arm through at all. So I just had to stick my left hand out. Unfortunately,
a giant left hand. There's the cover of Sports Illustrated. There's a great picture of you and Mel on that catch, but the size of your hand in relation to the football is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and my reaction was after I caught it, I lifted it above my head, and I've been in the end zone, 3, 4, 5 steps, and then he finally jumped over me and knocked that ball out of my hand. So I turned to him, and just said something, and he barked back, and then I said something else. The funny story about this, when the Broncos played the Steelers in the AFC Championship game in '98. Scott and I were doing the show from a Pittsburgh hotel in the lobby, and Mel, in his big cowboy hat, is there. And I said, God, that's Mel Blount. So I went up and asked him if he'd come on the show, and he said he would. And Scott, of course, was talking to him about, things and
egging him on
a little bit. And Mel said, the story about that, he said, during the week leading up to the game in Pittsburgh, this was after the game in Cleveland, he said, Jack would walk by my locker, Jack Lambert, and say, Mel, you gonna let that white boy kick your ass again? And so I'm like, oh man, I mean, no wonder you were interested in playing.
So me being the stat hound, you caught more touchdowns against the Steelers than any team.
Yeah, I had some of my best games against what I think to this day over a 6-year period is the greatest team in NFL history.
They got a few in the Hall of Fame.
I think they have, of their 22 starters, I think it's 11 guys in the Hall of Fame.
Had to go play the Hall of Fame twice a year.
Yeah, it was.
In Cleveland.
And back then it was a different era. I'm glad they've cleaned things up, now. But back then, it was anything goes. And you were tested. Your willingness
as a receiver, especially.
Yeah, your willingness to go
you
across the middle.
Yeah.
Was going to get tested, and they were going to find out, how serious you were about coming in there.
Yeah, well, I have a negative stat for you. In your days with Cleveland, and when you played the Broncos 5 times, and you lost.
Never beat them.
0-5.
Yep.
You did get a touchdown against them.
I did?
Yeah, you caught a touchdown pass right by the pylon.
Dennis Smith.
Yeah. So that had to feel good. But was playing the Broncos important to you because it was your hometown?
It was. It really was. We came back my rookie year. I was the punt gunner. I mean, stop and think about this. I'm 6'5" and 230. I was the punt gunner, covering punts. Back then, you could cut the gunner. And so Rick Upchurch had not 1 but 2 punt returns for touchdowns in that game. But one of the first kickoffs in the game, I'm like R2 in the kickoff coverage team, and I'm fired up. I mean, I'm home in Denver.
Yeah.
So normally R2, you just have to make sure you turn everything inside to
Yeah.
those that really want to go down and stick their head in. And this time the ball was kicked to that side, and the wedge, you could lock arms, you could do a lot of stuff. The wedge slid over like right in front of me, and so I had to make a split-second decision like, okay, what am I going to do here? So I would not recommend anybody do this, but I ran as hard as I could and closed my eyes, and I think I ducked my head and just torpedoed
blew it
into the
up.
wedge.
Would you have done that maybe anywhere else, or just because you were in Denver?
I think because I was in Denver, I was a little more excited about it, but almost knocked myself out. I got up and started walking to the Broncos bench. And then what I remember most was Forrest Gregg was our coach. He made a big deal about that in film.
Yeah.
So,
Fellas.
here's a wide receiver, but I'm thinking, man, I would never, ever do that again in a million years.
Yeah, subliminally.
Yes.
The guys are looking around going, that guy is nuts.
Yeah.
So you enjoyed Cleveland. Cleveland enjoyed you. You really did. You mentioned the 5 receivers. You got to play with guys like Paul Warfield and
Yep.
Reggie Rucker and some great.
Ozzie Newsome.
Yeah, Ozzie. I mean, just some great players. And you liked Cleveland a lot. But when it ended, you came back to Denver. And Denver, for all your love for Denver and your growing up loving the Broncos, that wasn't a great fit for you at what became the end of your career. That was
Right.
not a good time.
No, it wasn't. My last year, I'd broken my ankle again, playing charity basketball.
Right.
Browns players traveling
Right.
around the state trying to raise money for charity, broken my ankle. And so that was the night of my surgery, was the night of the North Carolina State-Houston basketball championship. So I came out of the surgery in time to watch part of the game, but I was not ready for the training camp the next year. I went to camp, but I was, I'd lost a step, and so I struggled to get back. And so they had a new coordinator, and the coordinator at the Browns really, I don't think, was feeling me too much, and the feeling was mutual. So after the end of the season, I still have a great relationship with Sam Rutigliano, and I asked him, if you could trade me, and then he said Denver was one of the teams interested. I said, hey, Sam, if you can work something out with Denver, that'd be great. So I was excited, even though I know I had lost, I'd lost a step. I could tell there were things that I used to be able to do that I couldn't do.
But you wanted to be a Bronco. I mean, that was.
I did. I was hoping the Broncos would draft me coming out of college.
Yeah.
I hadn't lost a step at that point.
I
came back, and I was excited about it, but it was really a challenge. I wasn't getting a lot of time in training camp. I felt like I could still play, and I'd been a starter for 7 or 8 years, and so, and John was in his second year. Steve Watson was here. Mike Shanahan was my coach. Mike picked me up at the airport. I had no idea who he was. He said, "I'm your wide receiver coach." I said, "Okay, all right, well, good." So we go to camp, and I remember calling my agent, Jack Mills, at camp, and saying, "Jack, I don't get a good feel here. I don't think. Oh yeah, yep, they love you." And so the fourth game of the season, I was really frustrated because I wasn't playing, and I was embarrassed, to tell you the truth.
You wanted to be on the field, not watching the games.
Yeah, I mean, gosh. So the fourth game, we're playing the Chiefs at home, and Mike came in before the game and said, "Hey, you're going to be the 5th wide receiver today," which pretty much meant I wasn't going to play. And I said, "Well, how did that happen?" And so he said, "Dan." I said, "Okay." So, I've already got the red ass. So somebody gets hurt in the game, so they have to play me. So I catch a pass. It wound up being the only pass I ever caught from John. It was like a 3rd down, and I think it was like 3rd and 8. And I've got a defensive back. I'm in the inside slot. I got a defensive back with hard leverage inside. I can't get inside, even though ideally you'd want to get inside on that release. So I went outside anyway, caught it, and got tackled. Short, the 1st down, came to the sideline, and Coach Reeves is like furious with me. And so I was raised where, in these type situations, sporting events, I mean, you have to let that coach, make his point, right? It's not
You listen.
You listen.
Yeah.
You're not talking back to him. You're not debating him. You know what? He's the coach, and so I tried to interject with Dan. He had leverage I couldn't get, and he was, lighting me up. I mean, 10-year wide receiver, and you don't know that you got to. So I had to sort of bite through my lower lip, and I thought he was finished. And so I walked back to the bench, and like 30 seconds, 45 seconds later, he come. They didn't have they still had the cords they had to
Right.
pull. So Dan comes back and he's pulling the cord, and he goes in for like round 2. So I think with my frustration, I was embarrassed that I was brought home. I'm not playing.
It was the last straw.
It was. And so I reacted in a way that assuredly will get you cut. And
Magic words.
I said the magic words to him, and that was Sunday, and I got released on Tuesday. And Dan's gone, but Dan and I, we made up. We had our differences, but at the end, we had 2 or 3 great conversations.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I really did.
That's got to be valuable to you.
Yeah, because
little did he know that he was unleashing a giant in the media. That once you were done with all this silly cleat stuff, that you would become Team Dave Logan, that you would become the broadcaster you've become, and subsequently the coach you've become.
Yeah,
You're like Chuck Connors.
I made without the rifle. I made a pact with myself that when I got into the media full time, that I would not ever put myself in a position to where I could be accused of, well, you're saying this about Coach Reeves or the Broncos because he cut you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just would never go there. There was one story that is probably worth mentioning. I got up, I was having breakfast, already set up early breakfast with my boss at KOA that day. Got up at 6:15 reading whichever paper it was at that point. We had 2,
That was cool.
Rocky Mountain News and Post.
Yeah.
And I opened the sports section, which I always do, and Reeves, and the headline, Reeves upset with, and then italics, experts. I'm thinking, God, who's he pissed at? So I read down, and here he is quoted saying, Terry Bradshaw, Dave Logan, all these guys that know everything about it. It's like, what's he talking about here?
Yeah.
So because I'd gone completely out of my way to never, ever put myself in a position, if I thought it was a bad call, then I would say, hey, could you make the case they could have done something different?
Right.
Yes, you could. But I'd done that. So I had breakfast with my boss. I said, I want you to know, as soon as breakfast is over, I'm driving to the Broncos. He goes, I would really prefer you not do that. I said, I understand that. I do, and I appreciate your point. I'm going. So we finish breakfast. I drive out there. True story. I get a speeding ticket going out. Not very smart. I get out there. I have 2 uniformed guards that meet me in the parking lot. They said, Dave, how you doing? I said, fellas, how are you? He said, John Beek would like to see you. I said, I'm not here to see John. I'm here to see Dan. Yeah, but John wants to see him. John was the GM of the team.
So they had told him you were coming, apparently.
I think Lee called John.
Yeah.
Lee and John were very close. So John had me intercepted. I walk in John's office. How you doing? I said, I'm doing good, John. How you doing? Good. He said, listen, I have to put up with this every single day. I said, I understand that, but you're paid to put up with this. I don't know what this is. I'm going to be respectful, but I'm talking to Dan, period. Okay, so Jim Sakamoto, our good friend,
Yep.
told Jim. He said, "Well, he's in meetings." I said, "I'll just wait." So I waited for a couple hours. I'm standing there by the gate, and Dan walks out with a tray of food and starts walking over to the coach's table. So I'm like, all right. So I beeline right to the coach's table. Jim, doing his job, intercepts me, says, Dave. I said, "Jim, here's the thing. He's either going to come talk to me like now, or I'm going over to the coach's table. What are we doing?" So Jim gets Dan to come over. And Dan talked about, hey, Pam saw that this morning and she thought you'd be upset. He said, I was misquoted, but I had the time in the 2 hours to have. Back then you had the tape recorder.
Yeah.
And I had gotten the tape recorder from the reporter who wrote the story, and he wasn't misquoted.
No.
And so, it was just one of those things where I just said, hey, man, I mean, listen, I just want to know what are the rules of engagement here, because you come after me. I haven't said anything about you, and I've done it on purpose. And so he apologized. And again, I want to make it clear, we had 2 or 3 great conversations as Dan got older, and I was saddened by his passing.
Yes.
But it was hard for me just in Denver because I was just so thoroughly embarrassed on how the end of my career took place.
As athletic as you've been, though, I would always say, when I see you, your pride and your competitive nature are always there. You've always had that. I had the pleasure when after Sal and Essie died, they inserted me into a broadcast with you and Ron Zappolo to do the Washington Colorado game. So I got to spend some time with you on that weekend, and I remember I think Ron likes to tease you to bring up Red Right 88. And I just remember seeing like your hands change when that was the famous play where Brian Sipe threw the interception in Cleveland against Oakland. You guys were about to go to the AFC Championship game.
Yep.
I would imagine, you get to be our age, regrets are there. You have plenty to choose from, but that would be one of the bigger ones that sticks in your throat.
Yeah, it was a tough one for sure. Because that was the year we started 0-2. And then won 11 of the next 14, and we came from behind. Everything we did there was a little bit of magic to it.
Yeah.
And so we're on the 13-yard line. The conditions were awful. It was, I think, 5 or 6 below zero, but the wind chill, it was like 40 below. It was almost so cold.
Down 2 with a minute to go.
That you didn't care. That's cold. But we drove the length of the field. We'd missed 2 extra points and a field goal because it was like kicking on an ice rink.
Yeah.
But we called timeout, and Sam was talking about the set, and the last thing he said was, "If Dave's not open, throw it in Lake Erie." Now, that was the wrong end of the field for Lake Erie.
But he was throwing for Ozzie,
and Brian was the MVP of the league that year.
Yeah,
Brian Sipe was a terrific quarterback, and that was just one of those plays where the sound. I will never forget the sound of that stadium because we had 8,000 people there, but it went from total bedlam to total silence in a split second.
Because you guys, had you won, you would have seen the Chargers on your way to the Super Bowl. Would you have hosted that, or would that have been?
That'd have been in San Diego.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd have been a hell of a game. But I think our defense was a little better than ours. I think both defenses would have struggled in that game, but I don't think San Diego would have ever got us stopped.
I don't want to end on a bad note because I know that's not your favorite moment in your playing days. Coaching, you've just won another state championship, 13 now. Is it something you keep doing? You do till when? When do you get that's good? It's hard to see because you appear to be still like in mid-stride on it.
Yeah, I don't really know. I think my goal would be to leave a year or two early rather than holding on and somebody trying to figure out, like, golly, man, how do we gracefully tell this
Codger.
old dude we appreciate him? But
But just by phrasing it like that, there is not. You don't see the sunset. You say a year or two early means you're still down the road.
I mean, I think so. I think there are many, many, many challenges to being a high school coach and running a big program. I mean, some of them I enjoy more than others, for sure. But I think as long as I know why I coach, right? I coach to impact kids, to be able to interact with them, to mentor them, yes, to teach them some football, and yes, to hopefully put them in positions where they can be successful. I do it. I've always done it to honor my parents. My mom passed in 2021. My dad passed before he had a chance to even see me coach a game in 1993. So, but and I was an only son. So that's still an important component for me in this. You absolutely do not coach. It's not going to be in your tombstone that you won however many games you won and you lost however many and you won how many state titles. It really isn't. The joy I get out of it. I love competing, and I love the X's and O's and the strategy involved, and I love film, and I love to sit and look at film and try to figure out, okay, what exactly are they doing here, and what does that mean? And then go back and look at a previous game. Did they do that? That stuff has always been important to me.
It's triggering. Yeah, you like that.
I do.
Seeing it.
I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had chances to coach at different levels, and it just hasn't felt right.
The last thing I want to, did CU ever, because people always thought you would have loved to have coached at CU, and you didn't have what they would have considered the true resume.
Correct.
As a high school coach.
Yep.
But even as an AD or anything, have you ever come close to, have they ever sincerely approached you about working at your alma mater there?
I would say no. I mean, UNC offered me the head job in 2011, and I actually thought about that. I mean, Dick Montfort asked if I would just go up and interview, and I did. But I would have had to give up everything. And I think at that point, and I countered their offer, and I said, it was a 5-year offer, and I said, listen, we're going to win a national championship within 5 years, and when we do, then, these are the numbers for my assistant coaches, and we can sort of retrospect.
You had a full blueprint.
I really did. But I think in the long run, it would have been such a family change and lifestyle change. And I think it might have been a path, if I really wanted to do it, to bounce up after
Had
after
CU
that.
come at you sincerely, you probably would have been dying to do it, I would think.
I would have absolutely listened, because that was my school.
Yeah.
And I understood the feeling that, hey, Dave, I mean, you've been a high school coach. It's a different deal. And I think I've always prided myself on being able to identify what you don't know.
Know what you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, right? And then you hire people that do know, and then you learn. But from a competitive thing, I mean, it would probably not have been good for my health. I mean, honestly, because there would have been times, if we'd have, because I've watched them so long back, let's say 10, 12 years ago, and things were really struggling. I mean, if we'd have lost to, and then just fill in the blank by a final score of this at home, I'd have been suicidal.
That's how they ended up with Bill McCartney. I mean, they wanted Chuck Shelton from Drake after losing to Drake 2 years in a row, and
Lost to Drake.
And then Chuck didn't want the job, and they went and got this other guy, Bill McCartney.
Yeah, worked out pretty well, didn't it?
Worked out pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
I appreciate your time. I love talking
Good
to
to
you.
see you, Tom.
It is an incredible life. You're better than Chuck Connors. Well, we
don't
always
know
talk about
that.
it. I mean,
I don't
the
know.
three-sport athlete was great, and also then you think of the lives you've led as a broadcaster, as a coach, and as a player. It's nonpareil. It's terrific, and I
appreciate that.
love knowing you, and I love you taking the time to share with us today.
You bet. Enjoy seeing you.
Thanks, Dave. Terrific conversation with Dave Logan. So we want to give special thanks, of course, to Dave spending his time and sharing his stories with us, and also to the great Chuck Connors. I mean, the rifleman. That's pretty cool. That is going to do it for this edition of the other Tom Green Show. We try to do one every week. So far, so good. We hope to see you back here again next week. You can always reach out to us here at guerrillasports.net. We look forward to your feedback and look forward to seeing you again for another show next week.